Hey everybody, welcome to Morning Glory Farmstead. My name is Lolly and this channel is all about gardening, animals, and nature. Now the wind outside is fierce and the wind chill was -10 and I have been freezing in my house all night, even with the heat on. So I can't even imagine what it's like for those right now who do not have electricity. It's early and I've been up all night listening to the wind and really worried about my chickens, except for the two tiny ones that I have in one of my bathrooms. So before the sun came up, I made them a huge bowl of eggs with the eggshells and some organic veggies, and I just fed them. So I'm still defrosting, hence the hat and the sweater. Now they're all alive, but the temps are still bad the next few days, so hopefully none of them end up sick or with frostbite. All right, before I start giving you the dirt on soil, I always say my channel is about gardening, animals, and nature. And animal rescue is something that I have been passionate about for the last 8 years, and animals are a huge part of my life. So I'm going to be mentioning things here and there about my animals or offering tips and things like that. So a real quick reminder to those of you who have cats, how important it is for them to have something to scratch on, and preferably something that's not your furniture or your curtains. The cats were on the catio for a few minutes a couple of days ago before the temp dropped, so I put this new one together and I set it outside, and it took 2 seconds before they were using it. I have lots to scratch on in my house, and this is important for them throughout their entire life because it removes that dull outer layer of their claws so they can expose the new claw that's underneath, and it relieves anxiety. It's a form of exercise that strengthens and stretches their muscles, and it's one of the ways they mark their territory. I have put some links in the description box to some cat scratchers that I really like, just in case y'all are interested. All right, if you haven't watched my video on how my GREENSTALK gardens are saving my life and why gardening is so important to me, check that one out. I've got a playlist for all of my GREENSTALK videos that I'm doing. All right, I'm not an expert, but I love to learn, and so as I research and learn for myself, I'm going to turn around and I'm going to do some videos to share what I learned in case someone else finds it useful. But always feel free to double check, do your homework, your own research, and I'm definitely not trying to contradict anyone's personal garden experience and successes, okay? People do what works for them, and that is great. What I am going to do is just read several articles and then pick out kind of the main points that seem to be pretty useful, mostly verified and standard across the board, and then share it. I think these videos are going to be helpful because a lot of people are either just starting to try their hand out at gardening for the first time, or maybe they've only been gardening for a short period of time and we still have a few months before we start planting. So this is the perfect time to plan and kind of think things through a little bit. I want to make sure that I let you guys know how much I appreciate you hanging out with me. And if you are so inclined, please hit the thumbs up and subscribe, as that greatly helps my channel out, and it's going to increase the likelihood of me being able to get out helpful information to others as well. All right, soil is not all the same, you guys. It can be very different depending on whether you buy garden soil or potting mix at the store, or if it's dirt from your own yard or property. Now I have 5 basic but critical points to make about soil, and these are based on what others say from articles that I've read, not just my opinion. But of course, in the end, you do whatever you feel is best, all right? This is a judgment-free zone. All right, number 1 is don't use potting soil or potting mix for your in-ground garden. And it probably wouldn't be very economical to use it for a large raised bed either. And on the flip side, don't use garden soil for your container gardening. Potting soil or potting mix is used for containers like the GREENSTALK Vertical Garden or whatever containers and pots you want to use. And it's made up of a very strategic mix. It contains very specific amounts of each element and often has some things in it that you wouldn't find in regular garden soil, like materials that help it retain water a little bit better. On that note, a key point to remember is that soil in containers that are above ground are going to dry out faster than soil in ground, unless you're like one of my viewers who pointed out that she lives in a very wet climate in Washington. okay? Containers often have a drain at the bottom to prevent too much water and moisture, which is super important, but that also means that you lose the water. Whereas, when you water a plant that's in the ground, that water is going to stay in the ground near the plant or the roots longer. Also, the soil is more exposed to the sun, heat, and wind when it's in a container. All right, number 2, the soil makeup can be very different, not just from state to state or yard to yard, but even in your own yard. You may have areas that are more alkaline or more acidic, and that is super important information depending on what you want to grow in the ground. Now, I'm going to do a separate video on that. All right, now even soil you buy in bags can have different ingredients depending on the company. But for the most part, potting mix has a certain combination of important elements that are needed for most plants, and it's ready to go right out of the bag, okay? Message number 3, no matter where you grow your food or your plants, whether that's in containers, raised beds, or in ground, they are using the nutrients that have been provided to them, and they are going to eventually deplete the soil of those nutrients. So the potting mix does have a great blend, but because your plants are using the nutrients, it may only last for a couple of months. So, in addition to sufficient sunlight and water, you may need to give them a boost with some type of amendment. So you'll want to keep an eye on them, and it's always a great idea to do a little research so that you know what type of amendment they might need at some point when you get to that stage. If you have the money, it's kind of nice to get some of these supplies before the season is well underway so that you're not running around trying to find them if stores are running short during the high time of the gardening seasons. And I will be doing some videos on amendments as well. Now, if you can't afford amendments, then just do your best with watering and sunlight for as long as you can. I experimented with my tomatoes and greens in my GREENSTAK, and I added mealworms at the very beginning when I first planted seed, but I know that it had to be depleted because I did nothing else to them for several months, and I was still harvesting several types of greens on a daily basis. All right, point number 4. The texture of the soil is important. The garden soil or the soil in your yard is going to be more compact than what's in the potting mix, and airflow is important for plants of any kind. You may have to help out the soil in your yard so that its texture is suitable for plant growth. Again, the work has already been done for you with the potting mix that's made for containers, which is also why it is usually a little more pricey. All right, point number 5 is that if you're going to plant in your yard, it would be a very wise decision to do a soil test, and I'll do a video on that too pretty soon. Certain plants grow better in particular conditions, for instance, either a more acidic or alkaline soil. And if you know your soil is depleted in particular nutrients, this is going to help you figure out exactly what you need to add so that you're not wasting your money on different amendments that you may not even need. Don't go out and buy a bunch of amendments just because maybe you've heard others mention them or you've seen others using them on YouTube at some point or something like that. The amendments really need to be relevant to what you're growing and to your soil. All right, so those are just some very basic but critical first pieces of info to have as you start planning for your garden. You guys share this video if you know anybody that may need some of this basic information about soil. Thanks for hanging out with me, and I'll see you real soon in the next video. And until then, y'all have a great couple of days. Bye-bye.